Hi, I'm Brad Rosley. Thanks for tuning in today to my video blog here on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about going back in time a little bit. I woke up this morning and saw a great feature on a hot new car, the Steve McQueen driven Mustang Bullitt. Now, a lot of you aren't old enough to have ever seen that movie. It was slightly before my time as well, but I did watch the movie more than once. It's about Steve McQueen is a really cool guy back in the 60s, and he's driving his Mustang Bullitt, which is a really hot car. And the good news is that Ford has recreated the Mustang Bullitt, and their starting price on the Ford Mustang Bullitt I looked up was about $44,000. And I was just curious on how things have changed in prices over the last 50 years. Well, for starters, the Ford Mustang Bullitt in 1967 you could buy it for only $2,750. And like I said, today the starting price was about $44,000 before you add other bells and whistles. I thought you might be curious how that compares to other things from back in the day. You may be tired of hearing your parents or grandparents talk about how inexpensive things were back then or how expensive things are now, but I thought I'd give you some clues as to what they did cost back then. A new home, the average new home, believe it or not, in 1967 cost about $14,000. Today, you can't even buy a new car for that. Today's new home average cost is about $225,000. Obviously, it depends on where you live, but what an increase. 15 times more today than it did 50 years ago. I thought one thing that was especially interesting about that is what happens if home prices increase another 15 times over the next 50 years? Any idea how much a new home might cost in 50 years at that same rate? Well, guess what? I did the math. You're looking at $3.375 million for an average new home. Imagine that. Now, I don't know if that's going to actually happen or not. No one does. But I guarantee you 50 years ago when people were buying homes for $14,000, they never dreamed that an average home would cost $225,000. I know my parents bought their first home for the mid-20s back in the 60s, so I do believe it. And that home now is probably worth between $200,000 and $300,000, so I've seen it up close myself. Median incomes, however, have also kept up, but not quite as much. The median income back 50 years ago was $7,300. That's for a whole year. That's a real job. That's not part-time work. Today, that number is up to $58,000. Just jumped up now a little bit in the past year, which is exciting, and it seems to be a new trend that's jumping up. So your $58,000 income bought a $225,000 home back in the day. Well, I've also projected that number forward. What might the average, or the median income be, I should say, 50 years from now if it increased by 7 times like it has the last 50 years? The good news, $410,000 average salary. Of course, you're going to need $410,000 a year to pay for a $3.3 million new house, right? So these numbers are just to give you some perspective. Again, no one ever dreamed back 50 years ago when they were making $7,000 that they'd be making $58,000. Just like no one ever dreams 50 years from now, you or your kids might be making $400,000 a year as the average income. What are some other prices and how have they increased? Well, I looked up the average rent. Today's average rent's about $1,600 a month. Again, it all depends on where you live. I know some people pay a lot more than that, and some pay quite a bit less than that. Back in the day, 50 years ago, the average rent was $125 a month, which, by the way, is substantially less than my cell phone bill, and less than my DirecTV bill and some other bills. So things have increased a ton over that time. What about gasoline? That's a nice barometer. I don't know if we'll be using gas 50 years from now, but 50 years ago, the average price for a gallon of gas was 33 cents. It's funny, I was in Mexico last week, and in Mexico, they actually still have gas station attendants, which means somebody else pumps your gas for you, cleans your windows, and you actually tip them, and they put the gas in your car for you. Most states did away with that many, many years ago, but back then, now you get a gallon of gas for about $2.50 a gallon. So it's gone from 33 cents to $2.50 a gallon. I don't know what will happen with that going forward, only because there's alternative sources of energy that may push those prices down or may make gas obsolete for cars. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Lastly, I'd like to focus on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The Dow Jones 100 years ago was around 41. No one ever believed that by 1967 it would be up to 905. 905 on the Dow Jones. Anybody know where it is now? 25,800 roughly. So the Dow Jones has jumped up dramatically, approximately 27 times in the 50 years. If it did that again the next 50 years, the Dow Jones wouldn't be at 25,800, it would be at approximately 700,000 on the Dow. Again, you may think there's no chance of that. When I started, it was right before the Dow crashed in 1986 and 87 during the crash, and it went down to 1,751, down from 2,200. I never would have guessed it would have been at 26,000 here today. It's going to be several 100,000 in the future. There's going to be new companies that make it up. It's going to be way higher. We're going to look at some other investments and how things have gone up in price and how the market's going to go up a lot more over the long term in future videos. So stay tuned. Again, check out the new Ford Mustang Bullitt. It is a hot car if you can afford it. Enjoy the future videos. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel to get other financial information type videos like this one and others. Thanks a lot for listening. Have a great day.